The vibration of a payroll alert snapped me out of end-of-month spreadsheets. I glanced at my phone. $5,500 glowed on the screen. 5 years earlier, when I was just finding my footing, that number would have felt impossible. My name is Maya. I'm 30 years old, a creative director at a respected communications agency in New York City. From the outside, my life looked complete. A rising career, a quiet husband, a stable home. But perfection is often just careful lighting. Only I knew how thin it really was. My husband, Evan, worked as a junior accountant. His income barely reached a third of mine. I never held that against him. I believed marriage was balance. If one partner earned more, the other supported the home. Respect mattered more than numbers. Or so I believed, until Evan made a request that quietly bent everything out of shape. One evening, he sat beside me with unusual hesitation. He held my hands as if afraid the words might fall apart. His mother, Diane, was alone in a small Ohio town, he said. She'd suffered a mild stroke. One side of her body was weak. "I'm her only son," he whispered. "If something happens and I'm not there, I'll regret it forever." His eyes were red. My resolve softened instantly. I lost my own mother young, and abandonment cuts deep for me. I told myself we had space. I'd bought our 3-bedroom apartment years before marriage with my own savings. One more person meant one more plate, one more routine. I agreed, believing compassion was the right choice. I didn't realize that single yes unlocked a door that should have stayed closed. Diane arrived a week later looking fragile, leaning heavily on a cane. I rearranged my schedule, hired extra help, learned her medications by heart. But gratitude never came. Instead, complaints filled the apartment. The food wasn't right. I worked too late. The house felt cold. At night, just as I collapsed into bed, she would call for help again. Evan always defended her. "She's sick. Be patient." So I did. I kept giving, even as my space disappeared and my voice softened into apologies. If you've ever felt yourself shrinking to keep the peace, you know how dangerous that silence can be. One rushed morning, I realized I'd left my ID on the dresser and turned back home. I planned to slip in quietly, grab it, and leave unnoticed. But the moment I opened the door, something felt wrong. Music filled the living room, loud, cheerful, impossible to ignore. Diane stood in the center of the room, upright, laughing as she danced. The cane was gone. Evan sat on the sofa, phone raised, recording her with pride. They didn't see me. They didn't know I was there. I heard the jokes, the mockery, how easy I was to fool, how convenient my money was. Time froze. Rage begged me to burst in, but instinct whispered restraint. If I confronted them now, they would deny everything. So I stepped back into silence. Sometimes survival begins with patience. Standing outside my own door, I listened as the truth unfolded. Diane's voice was steady and sharp. She spoke about replacing me, about a woman named Vanessa who was expecting a child, about how a real heir mattered more than a wife who worked too much. Evan laughed along, talking about money, about waiting for my next raise, about using me a little longer before discarding me. Love collapsed in that moment. But clarity arrived. I didn't cry. I didn't confront them. I chose to observe. Plans leave trails. That night, I stopped seeing my home as a refuge and started treating it like a place that needed answers. I reviewed our finances. Small transfers I had never questioned suddenly formed a pattern. Always urgent, always emotional. Then, while Diane was out, I searched her room. What I found wasn't dramatic, just deeply unsettling. Notes, dates, observations about my habits, my schedule, my body. This wasn't chaos. It was intention. 2 days later, Evan left his laptop unlocked. Inside a folder labeled Projects, I found documents that made my breath catch. A loan agreement. $50,000. Signed in my name. The signature looked right at first glance and wrong at the edges. This wasn't debt. It was a trap meant to surface at the perfect moment. I photographed everything and saved copies where only I could reach them. Fear sharpened into focus. When someone prepares paperwork before a breakup, love has already left the room. After speaking with an attorney, I chose time over confrontation. I needed leverage, not drama, so I gave them exactly what they wanted to see. One morning, I presented a pregnancy test with 2 lines. The reaction was immediate. Diane straightened, Evan softened, meals improved, voices lowered. I was treated as valuable, not because I was loved, but because I was useful. I hinted at an inheritance tied to a healthy birth, and greed did the rest. That illusion bought me time to secure documents, protect assets, and plan my exit. But greed never sleeps. Evan grew bolder. His care turned rehearsed. Then I found the final piece, a life insurance policy taken out in my name, with Evan as the sole beneficiary. The timing was too precise to ignore. Soon after, he suggested a weekend trip to a remote mountain resort. Fresh air, he said. Rest. Every detail felt staged. Seclusion, cliffs, fog, no witnesses. I didn't refuse. I prepared. I documented conversations. I shared my location with someone I trusted. I planned for safety first. When danger disguises itself as care, awareness becomes your shield. At the resort, everything felt quiet in the wrong way. Evan's smiles were practiced. His attention felt measured. When we walked toward an overlook near the cliffs, the truth finally surfaced. Words he could never take back. Plans he believed were perfect. That was the moment the illusion broke completely. What ended everything wasn't luck or anger. It was truth. Recorded, undeniable. The plan built on greed collapsed under its own weight. The people who believed they controlled everything lost it all. After that night, nothing could be hidden. Evidence spoke louder than excuses. Consequences followed quickly and decisively. The home that once felt like a trap became a place I walked away from for the last time. Walking away wasn't failure. It was survival with dignity. Months later, I stood on a balcony overlooking the ocean, starting over in a new city. The air felt lighter. My work felt meaningful again. The fear that once lived in my chest had finally loosened its grip. Here's what I learned. Love without respect is not love. Silence without safety is not peace. And blind trust can cost more than money. It can cost your future. Pay attention to patterns, not promises. Protect what you build, and never confuse someone's performance with their character. If this story resonates with you, take a moment to reflect on your own boundaries. Strength doesn't always look like confrontation. Sometimes it looks like patience, preparation, and choosing yourself. If you value stories about resilience, awareness, and self-respect, stay with this channel. More real-life lessons are coming, and you're not alone.